Hello everyone, thank you so much for coming to today's Black History Month event. My name is Alice and I'm today's Zoom coordinator. Just a bit of housekeeping before we initiate the event. Can everyone please mute themselves if you're not the speaker? Just so that we can hear the speakers today's lovely voices and what they have to say today. We also have a question and answer segment happening at the end of today's event. So if you have a question, please raise your hand or write your question in the chat, and in the question and answer segment, we'll be able to answer your question very swiftly and promptly. I'm going to hand it over to Yetunde Adeshile now for more information. Thank you for coming, guys.
Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Black History, Basildon Black History Month commemoration for 2020. Back to Black History Month. This has been an exceptional year for Black History Month. And what do I mean by exceptional? It's been exceptional in the sense that we've had the challenges of COVID-19. Then we had the history of Windrush coming out, and then we had we had Black Lives Matters. And to me, it was just, there was no way we were not going to do Black History Month this year with all of that going on, because again, it's a different opportunity, another opportunity for us to get together as the BAME community, share history and share about the future. It is so important to me that we keep on doing this Black History Month, keep on growing in strength, in grace, and in everything as the BAME community, because it is important. We encourage each other, we support each other, then together we can all rise. And when we all rise, guess what? We all achieve. So on that note, I welcome you all to Basildon Black History Month commemoration for 2020. I hope and I believe that you will enjoy everything that we've got planned for you this afternoon. So thank you all so much for joining us. You are so welcome. But I know that we've got some amazing speakers to speak about Black History Month. But before I go any further, and I introduce the other speakers to you. So we've got Sidra and Naeem will be speaking to us. But we've got a short message from the Mayor of Basildon, because he's not able to join us today. And that message, I believe, will be beneficial to all of us. So I'm just going to hand over to Alice now, who's going to play the short message from our Mayor, the Mayor of Basildon, Councillor David Burton-Sampson.
Good evening. On this, what is the start of Black History Month 2020? And I'm very sorry that I can't be there with you this evening. I would have loved to be, but unfortunately I'm at a pre-arranged meeting. This year, of course, is going to be very different because of this global pandemic that we're finding ourselves in. But we will, of course, make the very best of this event. It's also very poignant because today is the 60th anniversary of independence in Nigeria. This time has sadly allowed old wounds to open, as we've seen starting in America with the tragic death of George Floyd at the hands of the police there. And this has allowed the Black Lives Matter movement to evolve and to develop throughout the whole world. And this is really important at a time when we should be standing together, unified, and we're seeing these divisions appear again. We must never forget the past. We must never forget our history of where we've come from. And we must never allow ourselves to go backwards. We must stand up as a community for unity now, and that unity to grow as we move into the future. Here in Basildon, we have started the Basildon side-by-side movement, and I'm absolutely over the moon to have been part of helping that movement to develop. And it will only grow moving forward as we fight for greater unity in our borough here and greater recognition for the BAME community within our borough. The next chosen generation and the organisers have put together a great programme of events, given the circumstances we are in. And I'm looking forward to getting involved where I am, and where I can, sorry, and I'd encourage you to do so as well. Enjoy this year's 2020 Black History Month. Let's look forward to the future, and I look forward to a time when we can all be together celebrating again. Thank you.
Thank you all for listening. That was the message that we had from the Mayor of Basildon. So this today begins the real celebration process for Black History Month 2020. And without, I've got to honor, we've got the honor of Councillor Sidra all the way from Barking and Dagenham joining us this evening. I've just got to mention her because she's a very, very busy councillor. She's the former mayor of Barking and Dagenham. So can you just help me, join me in just welcoming her, just give her a round of applause for joining us this afternoon. We appreciate you, Councillor. Do you want to just say hello to everyone very quickly?
Hello, good evening. Good evening, everyone. Happy Black History Month to you all. Good to see that Basildon is flying the flag and putting on a range of exciting events. So hopefully I'll join in some of them and we can have some good debates and good discussions going forward. But thank you for the warm welcome and look forward to sharing the afternoon for these sessions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Councillor. Thank you so much. We appreciate you for your contribution. So, without spending too much time, I'm going to introduce very quickly a woman that often, she tells me that when she's talking about me to other people, she says, "Oh, she's the Black version of me." So her name is. Correct me if I'm wrong, but her name is, or she's known as Lady Sidra Naeem. She's of the Muslim background, and there's something amazing. I could read about her here, but you're going to get the booklet later on. So I hope that you're either connected to, if you're connected to social media or anything like that, you will get details of this booklet on Sidra. Amazing, amazing, amazing woman. She doesn't live in Basildon, but she does a lot of work in Basildon. She runs the Women Together network, and I believe they meet every Wednesday, and they share, every Wednesday or every other Wednesday that they meet in Basildon, and they share their culture, they share food, and I just think, they share so many things. They do different activities. They've worked in partnership with other organizations that has allowed them to really, really be themselves and express themselves as, it's women together, but, anybody can join in, but it's predominantly run for the Muslim women by a Muslim woman who is Sidra. Sidra is also, she has also been, is it inaugurated, ordained, so she actually represents the Queen for Essex, which is very rare. She's the first BAME person to be in that position, so without further ado, I don't want to say too much about her. Sidra can say a bit more about herself. She's a teacher, so she's very experienced in teaching young people, especially working within schools. So please join me to welcome to this platform this afternoon, Lady Sidra Naeem.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me today. I feel really, really privileged that you invited me as a non-Black person to speak today for Black History Month. I must say that whenever I am with all of you, I do feel like one of you. I've been to many, many events, and I'm really, really humbled because everybody treats me so special, and I get great respect from the Black community, sometimes more than what I get from my own community. So I really, really feel, just like one of you, and I feel very, very passionate as well about Black history. So I have got actually a PowerPoint which I'm going to share with you, which will shock the life out of all of you, because it's actually the immigration, the history of the immigration of blacks into this country before Windrush even happened, which is really interesting. So I'm going to share a talk with you all. So basically, the history of Black Britain. Most people think that the immigration of blacks actually happened right at the time of Windrush. But did you know that blacks have been in Britain right since Roman times? Can you believe that? Not since Windrush, when people think that a lot of blacks arrived here from countries within Africa or the Caribbean, or because of British rule or the World War II. It was well before that. So believe it or not, I've got evidence here from the York Museum of a lady who was of black origin. She was called the Ivory Bangle Lady, and her remains have been dated right back to the second half of the 4th century and were discovered in York in 1901. Research and archaeological analysis from Reading University in 2010 revealed a very rich British-born Roman woman of North African descent. She was found with jet and elephant ivory bracelets, earrings, pendants, beads, and a blue glass jug, and a glass mirror. And that proves that blacks have been here since Roman times. The next one is going to shock you even more. Did you know that in the 1500s, during the Tudor period, there were hundreds of black migrants actually living in England? Now, I've got an arrow there on this very long scroll, which shows John Blank. He was an African trumpeter. He was depicted on a 60-foot long roll depicting the prestigious Westminster tournament of 1511, an elaborate party which Henry VIII put together to celebrate the birth of his son. And did you know there were also consequent letters of evidence from John Blank, which he wrote to Henry VIII, where he asked for a pay rise. He petitioned for an 8p a day pay rise from Henry VIII. Isn't that just so amazing? The next one is going to shock you all even more. The next one is actually a queen, a black queen of England. This is the portrait of Queen Charlotte. It's painted by Johann Joseph Zoffany. She was a princess from Germany who had North African ancestry from the Moors, and she became a British queen after marrying King George III in 1761. Charlotte was also the mother of 2 British monarchs, George IV and William IV. Queen Charlotte was descended from a black branch of the Portuguese royal family. And did you know that Queen Charlotte was the great-grandmother of Queen Victoria? Now, in this same era, there was a huge slave trade that was happening in Britain, and thousands of slaves were brought into Britain to be sold then into other countries. And there is one African slave, which there is a painting of, which I am now going to put on the story of. He was actually Muslim.
This is not an ordinary portrait. It's called The Fortunate Slave, and it was painted in 1734 by the English painter William Hall. On the surface, it might look like a typical English painting, but what's really special about it is that amongst all the paintings of famous English men and women of the 18th century, this is the very first in which the subject is black. And once you know the story of its subject, Ayuba Suleiman Diallo, you'll see what makes this painting extraordinary. Born and raised in eastern Senegal to a prominent Muslim family, Diallo was known for his great intelligence and memory from a young age. By the time he was 15, he had memorized the entire Quran and familiarized himself with the Maliki school of Islamic law. Unfortunately for Diallo, his life quickly changed from one of study and scholarship to the horror of slavery. Senegal was a major victim of the transatlantic slave trade, and by the age of 30, he was captured, enslaved, and shipped to the United States. Despite the cruelty and abuse he faced, Diallo remained devoted to his Islamic rituals, going into nearby woods to pray 5 times a day. After a child humiliated him and threw dirt in his face during prayer, Diallo decided to flee the plantation only to be recaptured and imprisoned. Diallo decided to write a letter from prison to his father in Africa. This letter was intercepted by James Edward Oglethorpe, the director of the Royal African Company and the founder of the American colony of Georgia. Upon reading it, Oglethorpe wrote that he was touched by Diallo's words and arranged that Diallo was to be freed and sent over to England. When Diallo arrived in 1733, he was greeted as a free man amongst the people of England. He made friends in the circles of the elite and would often debate with Christian priests and bishops. At a time known for its extreme racial prejudice, people were impressed with his intelligence, monotheistic beliefs, and piety. Diallo was approached by William Hall to paint his now famous portrait. What makes this portrait significant is not just the presence of a black man, it's the way he's depicted. When people of African descent were painted in the 18th century, they were almost always shown in racist and demeaning ways. Facial features were exaggerated unnaturally, and they were never the subject of the painting, usually being reduced to the background as scary and inhuman figures. This portrait was the first to depict an African Muslim ex-slave as not only human, but noble. His posture and frontal direction were chosen to make him more likable, and his expression is pleasant, rather than evil or disturbed. However, what really stands out is the red book hung around his neck. This book is one of 3 Qur'ans Diallo had written purely from memory during his imprisonment. In many ways, this portrait sums up his incredible story. A profoundly religious West African man, enslaved and abused, who won respect and freedom from a society that believed he was inferior, and who throughout his years in slavery never lost pride in his identity as a black Muslim.
Okay, did you know that the slave trade was very, very prominent in Glasgow? And did you know that so many of the roads there were made from the wealth that came from the slave trade and from tobacco, sugar, and cotton that was created and sustained by enslaved people, mainly in Jamaica, Trinidad, and Barbados. Many of the Glasgow's prominent city centre streets are actually named after 18th century slave owners who made fortunes from the plantations. So that is very, very interesting. I also have a picture here of another slave. This was actually the first poet to publish a book on poetry, actually here in England. Phyllis Wheatley was born in West Africa when she was a young girl. She was put on board on a ship and sent to the United States, where she was sold as a slave to a family called the Wheatleys. She was actually named after that ship, the Phyllis. While Phyllis was a slave, she was taught to read and write, which was very unusual at the time. She wrote her first poem at age 14, and at age 20, she actually then came to Britain, and she did actually publish her book of poetry here in England. My next video is of Sancho. He owned a grocer's shop in central London, and he was the first black person to vote, to be able to vote in Britain. Here is a video on him. Okay, and this is actually the very first black nurse. Her name is Mary Seacole. And as you can see, I'm going through the ages in date order, right up to Windrush. So let's have a look at her video all about her.
Born in the capital of Jamaica, Kingston, in 1805, Mary was the daughter of a Jamaican mother and a Scottish father. Her mother ran a hotel, and there she treated injured soldiers by helping them rest and giving them medicines made with plants. In 1853, the Crimean War began. Mary heard about it and wanted to help. The war was fought in an area of land called the Crimean Peninsula. Mary asked to be sent to the battlefield with a group of nurses, but she was turned down, so she sailed there with her own money. The terrible battles meant that many soldiers were hurt. Mary set up a hut made of metal sheets and served hot food and drinks. She was nicknamed Mother Seacole. When the war ended, Mary had little money left. The soldiers she helped raised cash to thank her for what she'd done. She wrote a book about her life called The Wonderful Adventures of Mrs. Seacole in Many Lands.
And there she is, that's a real life picture of her. And as you can see, she's dressed in Victorian clothes, just like the British, just like the English. Okay, and then we are now going to look at going through the ages. We always talk about World War II, but did you know that more black people came to Britain during World War I, mostly from Jamaica? So here is a video about the First World War.
The problem was when new officers came in, they potentially had a more sort of racist attitude, looking at sort of black soldiers and not thinking that they were as good as the white soldiers they commanded previously.
There are many stories that that point to the exclusion and discrimination of black soldiers. One could go as far as saying that many have been effectively written out of British military history, and that's really sad.
Okay, and then this young lady, Lillian Bader, she was born in 1918 in Liverpool, and she became the first black woman to join the British Armed Forces. Starting out as a canteen assistant at an army base in Yorkshire, she eventually trained as an instrument repairer before becoming a leading aircraftswoman, and soon afterwards earning herself the rank of corporal. 3 generations of her family actually served in the armed forces. And when she left the army to have children, she actually then went to the University of London to get a degree after many, many hardships. Because she was a black woman, England would not let her be educated. And then after that, she actually became a teacher as well. A very talented lady. Now, by this stage, did you know that Brixton was the place where lots and lots of blacks were being settled? And this is actually a picture of some children lining up in Brixton, South London, and they are there in 1938, and they are there to see Queen Mary, who is coming to open up Lambeth Town Hall. And as you can see, there are many, many black children there, freely with white British English children ready there, welcoming her. So that is a very, very interesting picture. And then after that, we've got the Second World War. And during World War II, Britain recruited nearly 600,000 African men to fight in the Second World War, but more came over in the First World War. And then it is actually after that, after 2 world wars, Britain was left torn. In 1948, Britain needed people who would take very little pay, who can come over and help rebuild Britain. And that is when thousands of Black people arrived by ship from Commonwealth countries. The public had absolutely no idea why these people were coming. It was kept hidden from the public. So here is a quick video on the Windrush generation, which is right at the end actually of my talk, because I wanted to discover all the people who came here before.
They've come to seek work in Britain and are ready and willing to do any kind of job that will help the motherland along the road to prosperity.
Okay, and now let's look at now. Since then, it was the people of colour that kept the nation moving, and this can still be seen today on London's transport, NHS and buses and care workers everywhere. Black people are still pivotal in our domestic and hospitality industries too. Did you know that in 2006, the then Labour government claimed that the economic benefit gained from Black migrants was £6 billion. Today, Britain has the world's 5th biggest economy, and it is Black people and the legacy of immigration that have helped the country to achieve this successful economic status. Black people have died for our country, boosted its economy, cared for the people, and produced some of its greatest singers and athletes and inventors as well. And that is basically the end. I'm actually, as you can see, right in front of the Windrush ship, and I'd like to now take questions from the audience.
Thank you so much, Lady Sidra. Thank you so much for that presentation. Very, very educational, and to be quite honest with you, very inspirational. And there are some, you know, there's a lot of lessons to be learned there. I think I made reference to the Windrush generation at the beginning of my speech, and I said, you know, to be quite honest with you, this is what Black history is all about. There's a lot of history in this country, and unfortunately, because it's forgotten, and if it's not for the sake of history and people who are passionate about history, who knows? Maybe they wouldn't have revoked, you know, the deportation order for the Windrush generation. So we are glad. You know, as a Bay community, we've got to keep moving forward. We've got to keep doing what is right by the people in this country, so that the history doesn't keep repeating itself in the next generation for our children. Thank you so much for joining us. But before we go, we're just going to give you the opportunity to ask Sidra any questions that you might have. So if you have any questions, please do raise your hand now, and the administrator will give you the opportunity to ask your question, and then we can maybe try and bring it to a close. Does anyone have any questions for us? Rani Moorcroft to the platform. Welcome, Rani.
Thank you very much, Itunde. Thank you very much. Right, just a very quick trot through some of the background to what I'm going to say, because it was very interesting to see Sidra's presentation. I'll pick up, it's about the celebration, of course, of where we have come from. But unless you really know where you've come from, you don't know where you're going. Just a couple of points I'd pick up on is about Mary Seacole. Mary Seacole is always, always, always taught in Black History Month. But the background to her is that when she was hailed, when she went to the Crimea, she and Florence Nightingale were treated equally. They were both heroines, but she had to go on her own steam. She went to see the Queen, but she had to raise her own money, and she had to go there on her own because they would not allow a black woman to go. Now, when she came back, having done all of the real hard lifting behind the front in the war zones, teaching with her medical skills, she was a lady. She came from very good stock. And she and Florence Nightingale were accepted by Queen Victoria. However, when the idea of her being brought forward and a statue erected to her, an organization was set up which bitterly attacked her record, her morals, and it took until I think it was 2016 before the very first black statue of a woman was erected, and that was at St. Thomas's Hospital. She is looking in one direction at the House of Parliament, and when our Prime Minister Boris came out, he would have passed her. But Mary Seacole is an expression that of having to fight hard. The Windrush generation, this is another thing that is a real passion of mine, because we always celebrate 22nd of June when the boat arrived. And we always see the picture of, which is always there, the bow, and they're all coming off with their little bags and things. Now, actually, for me, it was around about the 15th of May. I've got to get the date right, either the 5th or 15th, when the Windrush actually went back. And it went back on 15th, carrying hundreds of service people who had served this country, who had fought in the war, who had won medals. And it was never, ever, ever recognized. It's very sad.
Thank you so much, Rani. So much information there. We have officially now opened Black History Month in Basildon. So thank you for joining us.
Really enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.